So, what is going on, guys? I am Black Ops Amazing. Now, yesterday, Treyarch released the intro cutscene for our new Zombies map, DLC 3 Alpha Omega. I've done a full breakdown of that on my channel. If you want to check it out, I will link it down in the description. However, there was one specific important thing that I missed, and that was the fact that we could actually see Dr. Monty's other form. I didn't notice this originally. Loads of you guys pointed this out to me. And so in this video, I want to talk about Dr. Monty's true form, explain what this could mean, who really is he, and also answer some other questions that you guys have been asking about this trailer. So it's kind of going to be a Zombies Q&A, but focused around Alpha Omega. Anyway, so getting into it, as I said, I've done a full breakdown already, but the thing I missed what I said in the video was, where is Dr. Monty during the Great War? He was nowhere to be seen. If you go through all of these sections that showed the Great War in the trailer, in my first breakdown, I couldn't see Dr. Monty, which for me was strange because the main reason our characters were going back to this time was to take him down, and for us not to be able to see him was, to me, of course, weird. We could see the Shadow Man in the Great War, but I couldn't see Monty. But as you guys pointed out to me, actually he was there. However, not in his human form that we've seen him in so far. Just like the Shadow Man, it seems Dr. Monty also has a second form as well, and in fact they look pretty identical. This here in the middle with the red scarf, the green jacket, the trousers, this alien-like creature is Dr. Monty. His true form has finally been revealed. This is what he actually looks like. And we can also see he's fighting alongside the Keepers. He is leading them. Whilst the Shadow Man is leading the Apothicons, Dr. Monty in the Great War was leading the Keepers. But the question is, why do Dr. Monty and the Shadow Man look exactly the same? We know the Shadow Man is an Apothicon. This is what we believe to be his Apothicon form. Yet Dr. Monty looks the same, so is he an Apothicon as well? We've known for a long time that the Shadow Man is evil. We've recently found out that Dr. Monty is evil, but we can clearly see them going against each other. During the Great War, they weren't working together. They were fighting against one another. Yet we can see the strange thing is, they both look the same. Their second form is identical. If Dr. Monty and the Shadow Man weren't wearing their clothing, then I'm sure you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. To get a better idea of what's going on, if we take a look back in the Canorium, the very first thing it said was, in the beginning, there was only the Ether and the Keepers. Among them were two beings who would later be known by many names. One would be known as Dr. Monty and the other as the Shadow Man. So the Canorium tells us that in the very beginning, before all of these dimensions and universes existed, at the very start, there was only the Ether and the Keepers. And among them were two beings who were known by many names, but we know them as Dr. Monty and the Shadow Man. The Canorium tells us that both of these characters were the first two beings to ever exist. Notice the word beings, it doesn't say human being, it specifically just says being, which if you look up the definition, it means existence or the nature or essence of a person. The Canorium doesn't tell us that Dr. Monty and the Shadow Man were human beings, it just says they were beings. So originally, in the beginning, Dr. Monty and the Shadow Man really could have been anything. They didn't have to be human, and possibly what we are seeing with Dr. Monty and the Shadow Man being these alien creatures, this is their original being, what they existed as from the beginning, and then over time we see they could change form and turn into a human. So if the Shadow Man is an Apothicon, does that mean Dr. Monty is as well? Again, on another page of the Canorium, it tells us more about their existence in the beginning. It says, in the beginning, some Keepers began to experiment with the Dark Ether. When they did this, it began to corrupt and corrode their souls. Among them is the Shadow Man. A war then broke out between the corrupted and uncorrupted Keepers. This was called the War of Argotha, where eventually the corrupted Keepers were facing defeat, and so they were banished to the Dark Ether beneath creation. The remaining Keepers then took on Mantle of the Guardian, whilst the corrupted Keepers, now trapped in the Dark Ether, began to contort and evolve over eons, ultimately becoming the Apothicons. Looking nothing like they originally did, their desire above all else was to return to Argotha. So this is interesting because it said, some Keepers began to experiment with the Dark Ether, which corrupted and corroded their souls. Among them is the Shadow Man. We are told that the Shadow Man was among the Keepers when they got corrupted and eventually turned into the Apothicons, which makes it sound like the Shadow Man at one point was part of the Keeper group. It says he is among them, which again, if you look up the definition, it means something in relation to or being a member. It sounds like in the beginning the Shadow Man was a member. He was among the Keepers before he got corrupted and turned into a corrupted Keeper and then an Apothicon. And if that's right, if at one point in the beginning the Shadow Man was a Keeper, since he was the only other being to exist alongside Dr. Monty, does that mean Monty is as well? Both of these characters at the start were Keepers. However, the Shadow Man turned evil and changed, but Monty stayed the same. Monty is still a Keeper, and as we can see in the Great War, it is him leading the Keepers into battle against the Shadow Man who is leading the Apothicons. So I believe both of these characters in the beginning were Keepers. Monty still is, but the Shadow Man isn't because he got corrupted. And if we actually look at the Shadow Man's face, it does resemble some of the same features that the Keepers do, specifically the teeth and how they look, also the head shape besides from the tentacles, but a lot of the features on the face are extremely similar to a Keeper, and the same goes for Dr. Monty, so I believe that's exactly what they are. Which then brings up many more questions. Why are Primus going to kill Dr. Monty then? Yes, we know he has been keeping them in this loop, but it was Primus who worked alongside the Keepers during the original Great War to slay the Apothicons, so technically they worked with Dr. Monty. I feel like there's a bigger reason that we don't know of, besides from him keeping the characters in a cycle. There must be more of a reason as to why they want to defeat him. And what sheds even more light on Dr. Monty is if we go back and listen to the radios and wisps that we heard in Revelations, some of the quotes that Monty and the Shadow Man say tells us more about their relationship in the beginning and what they are, because there's clearly something similar between Dr. Monty and the Shadow Man. Besides from their alien forms looking the same, in their human form, they also have a lot of similarities as well. And because of this, a lot of people have been saying that actually, what if Dr. Monty and the Shadow Man are the same person? They are the same beings, just from different time periods. Now, I don't know all the theories that are flying around, but one of them is that Dr. Monty is the Shadow Man from a different universe and time. We've already seen in our zombie storyline, there are multiple versions of our characters. We've seen like 100 Richtophens, we've seen different Dempseys and Tachios. Well, what's to say there aren't many different versions of Dr. Monty or the Shadow Man, and actually they are the same person. Their alien forms look pretty much identical. Like I said, if they weren't wearing clothes, you wouldn't really be able to tell the difference. And their human forms look very similar. So could it be that Monty is the Shadow Man, just from a different time or dimension? And something that could kind of relate to this is a quote that he says in Revelations. It's kind of weird. It doesn't really fit in with anything else. We don't really know what Monty's on about. He just randomly changes subject and starts talking about this, but there must be a reason why Treyarch decided to add this quote for him into the game. This is what he says.
Just so we're clear, I'm absolutely not talking about death. That's a whole other can of worms. Speaking of which, you know how people say when you cut a worm in half, both parts keep on living? Well, they do. Kind of, for a bit. But then one of them dies, not sure if it's the arse or the head. Well, that's the problem with worms. They're a bit short on distinguishing features. What was the point I was making?
So, as you just heard, Dr. Monty says, you know how people say when you cut a worm in half, both parts keep on living? Well, they do, kind of, for a bit. But then one of them dies, not sure if it's the arse or the head, but that's the problem with worms. They're a bit short on distinguishing features. So this was totally out of context from what he was saying before. He just randomly starts talking about worms, telling us that when they get cut in half, both parts carry on living, at least for a little bit. Not sure if it's the arse or the head because they lack distinguishing features. And to me, this kind of sounds like Monty might be describing himself and the Shadow Man. If we look at their alien forms, they look the same. They too lack distinguishing features. There's nothing besides from their clothes, but if they didn't have them, there would be no distinguishing features that we could use to tell the difference between him and the Shadow Man. And he says when you cut a worm in half, both parts keep on living, or at least for a little while. Again, could that be describing Monty? As I said earlier, at one point in time, could Monty and the Shadow Man have been the same person? Like a worm, they got cut in half. That really could mean anything. But Monty being the head and the Shadow Man being the arse of the worm, they were once one, they got split up, and now both of them are living at the same time, but you can't tell the difference between them. That could be what Monty is trying to say in a very strange way. A lot of what Monty says is weird anyway, but one theory that people have is Monty and the Shadow Man are the same person. And that wasn't the only thing that was said in Revelations. We also heard Monty and the Shadow Man describe their friendship, their relationship that they had in the beginning.
Now here's the thing. I knew a bloke, and I'm talking way, way, way back. He was the sweetest, most charming individual you could ever wish to meet. It was funny too. We used to have such a good old laugh together. Honestly, my sides hurt thinking about it. He was my friend. He was my best friend. And then the Apothicons got hold of him. Since then, he's pretty much acted as their agent, zipping around the galaxy. Wait, I keep changing it, don't I? Which do you prefer, universe, multiverse, omni-fucking-verse? Oh, it doesn't really fucking matter, does it? Yeah, let's get on with it. Short version is, he's no longer sweet, charming, or funny. He's what brought them here when he escaped the key.
So we heard Monty say, I knew a bloke, and I'm talking way, way back. He was the sweetest, most charming individual you could ever wish to meet. He was funny too. We used to have a good old laugh together. Honestly, my sides hurt thinking about it. He was my friend. He was my best friend. And then the Apothicons got hold of him, and since then he's pretty much been their agent, zipping around the galaxy. Of course, Dr. Monty is talking about the Shadow Man. He clearly used to be very good friends with him, since they were the only two beings to exist. It was just them two, so you could guess they'd be very close until the Shadow Man got corrupted by the Dark Ether. But it wasn't only Dr. Monty telling us things. The Shadow Man also said stuff to us about Monty as well.
You do realize that he's manipulated you? That's what he does. Dr. Monty is just one of the many names he's been known by. The Great Dragon, the Beast. Is this ringing any bells? Beelzebub, Lucifer, Satan, the Devil. Do you not see the power Dr. Monty holds over you? Do you not see you're being deceived? I can help you! Only through me can you find salvation!
In Revelations, he told the Primus crew that he's manipulating us, he's lying, we are being deceived. He says Dr. Monty is just one of the many names that he's known by. He also goes as the Great Dragon, the Beast, the Devil, the Beelzebub, Satan, Lucifer. He said, do you not see the power Dr. Monty holds over you? Which obviously at the time of Revelations, we didn't know that, but now we do. Since Blood of the Dead Unclassified, we found out that Monty is in fact evil, and we are going to defeat him. But the Shadow Man told us that all the way back then, and he also said,
You know you died a long time ago, don't you? You saw it. Didn't you realize? Are you really so foolish as to believe his lies?
You know you died a long time ago, don't you? You saw it, didn't you realise? Are you so foolish as to believe his lies? What exactly is the Shadow Man talking about when he says that? Yes, we know our characters have died many times throughout this cycle, but he says, and it sounds like he's talking about one specific point in time, he says, we died a long time ago. Could that long time ago be in the Great War or just after? Because we don't know what happened to Primus after the Great War originally, but could our characters have died at one point? They clearly don't know about it. Maybe that's the reason why Monty kept this cycle going. And then what I found interesting is he also said to us, you have followed a path marked by lies and deceit. Many others have failed. Why would you be any different? This has only ever ended one way. I have foreseen it. Has he told you what happens to you? What happens if you win the war? I'll tell you, I'm the only one who will be honest with you, all of you will simply cease to exist. Despite everything you've done, everything you've fought so hard for, you will simply fade away. So it seems like the Shadow Man knew exactly how Revelations was going to end. And well, if our characters have been stuck in this cycle for so long, if Revelations has happened hundreds and hundreds of times before, the exact same way, it seems like every time the cycle is reset, Primus forget what's previously happened. However, the Shadow Man and Dr. Monty don't. And it looks like the Shadow Man told us exactly what was going to happen at the end of Revelations. He told us that we'd fade away, that we'd cease to exist. Of course that didn't happen because our characters drank the blood vials, but that would have been the case if they didn't drink the blood. And again, if he's foreseen the ending, surely he would have known that at the end of Rev he was going to fail and die. However, the cycle would be reset, so what did it matter? So those are some really interesting quotes that tell us more about the Shadow Man and Dr. Monty and their relationship, but the big question is, what is Dr. Monty? Is he an apothecon, a keeper? Are him and the Shadow Man the same person? Personally, I think Dr. Monty is a keeper. We know that the Shadow Man is an apothecon, but originally it seems like the Shadow Man was a keeper as well. So that's Monty's true form revealed. But there's still so many questions. If Monty is a keeper, apparently the keepers are good. Primus are or have been working with them for a long time. So are they now going to go against them? Who's going to win the Great War in DLC 4, the Apothecons or the Keepers? Maybe no one. Surely if Dr. Monty is defeated, then that means the Keepers won't win the war. So will the Apothecons? And surely if they do, that's not going to be good news for anyone. We already know what their plan is. So what's going to happen? I don't know, although I am so interested to find out. So there we go. As always, hopefully you've enjoyed today's video. If you have, you know what to do. Drop a like rating. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. If the second part of this audio has sounded a little bit different, it's because I recorded it in a different place. I've had to record this second part a couple of days after the trailer released. But like I said, thank you guys so much for watching. And as always, I will see you guys in the next video. Until then, goodbye.